The time will come when, with elation, you will greet yourself arriving at your own door, in your own mirror. And each will smile at the other's welcome and say, "Sit, here, eat." You will love again the stranger who is yourself. Give bread, give wine, give back your heart to itself, to the one who has loved you all your life, whom you ignored for others, who knows you by heart. Take down the love letters from the shelf. Take them down, the photographs, the desperate notes. Take down the love letters, the photograph, the desperate notes. Peel your own image from the mirror. Sit here. Feast on your life. So, 3 months ago, just the day, it was Easter Day, Easter Sunday. COVID, still not fully inoculated. Inoculated. Mary and I decided to go. Out of nowhere, the thought came, let's go and visit and put flowers on Mom and Dad's grave and on her mother's grave. And so we set out. We had just bought a used Honda Fit, all that starving teachers or retired teacher could afford. So we thought, hey, the car will not break down. Let's drive out. We'll go out to Mililani first, and then we'll drive over to our Memorial Park. And so we did. We set out. And we found, in memory's pretty good. Not 100%, but we found Hampton and Osue, my dad and my mother, buried there in Mililani. And it was a beautiful morning. Not many people at Mililani, but a couple people with tents and flowers on Easter morning. What does that say? Well, it put me in kind of a desire to travel down to memory, to try to remember something of my mom and dad. It's telling that it was 10 years more since I'd gone to their grave. Oh, you know that line, right? Yeah. Something in me was pushing or pulling. And then we traveled all the way. After a pleasant morning, we traveled over to the windward side. We took H3. We went through the beautiful Alava Valley, which I hadn't driven on in years. And we ended up on a beautiful morning in Kaneohe. Oh my God. And we traveled, and Marilyn thought she knew where her mom and dad's grave were. Ellen and Anona Naone. Well, you know, you play out in your mind a map, and it led us up to this hill, and we went wandering to their gravestones. Well, we wandered and we wandered for a good hour. We wandered. I know exactly where it is. This is where the water pipe is, but there's like 4 or 5 water pipes. Oh, I remember the stream. Okay, the stream, but the stream was how close the stream was. Mary couldn't figure it out, but still, it was beautiful. And as we wandered around, I stumbled across a row of stones. It was the headstones for the Sacred Heart Sisters. I would say about 20 of them. And there were at least a half a dozen that I had met as a young boy. Sister Mary Gertrude was the most memorable. She was the Mother Superior of the Sacred Heart Order, whose property I live on, St. Anthony's Home. With sparkling eyes. She was from Brittany on the coast of France. And just the mystery of how this beautiful, she must have been a beauty when she was younger, had come to give, her whole life. And why I was standing there. And my whole Catholic past came up because of the sisters. It put me in that place of wonder. Well, we went from there to Diamond Head, where Mary was looking for her grandmother's grave. And while we couldn't find hers easily, we spent another hour wandering around, and I made some phone calls and found my grandfather, Cray Elijah Miller. And there were no flowers in his grave. And this, again, put me in that place of, what was their life like? In walking among the ghosts on Easter Sunday, or the dead on Easter Sunday, I began thinking about how the stories, of night marchers, of people who they say, the ancient dead, who still walk the pathways when they were alive, as if they were living in a parallel time. Like the tour guides in Rome who say that they see Roman soldiers walking. Only over the centuries of build-up, the road they walk on is 4 feet beneath the ground, so all you see is their torso walking, living the lives they once lived. And the question always is in all those stories that, well, the reason they're walking is because they have a question. The reason they're ghosts is there's some unanswered question, some need to answer. And having found that word, that question, they could pass on. They could pass on. Easter Sunday, resurrection, do we go somewhere? And I remember just a couple months ago, I don't know why, I found a map, wandering around again like a walking ghost on the internet, wandering around. And I found, I guess it was a drawing of the city of Florence on one side, a painting, the city of Florence on one side with its beautiful walls, and then Dante's vision of hell. And I realized, wait, the painting said the walls were the same town, and that really, the comedy was really not about the future, but it was about Dante's present moment. This was actually Florence. And it was a picture of the beginning of the book, of course, of Dante in hell. And the image that stuck for me was this. I don't want to go into it too deeply, but that hell is secular and nobody gets out. They're stuck in their circle, each of them in some kind of major obsession. Of course, the bottom is a frozen Lucifer, trapped up to his body in ice, crying his tears, and he's gnawing on the legs of Judas and I think Brutus. Traitors, Dante thought, disloyalty to friendship, breaking relationships, lacking pono or ho'oponopono. The disconnection was hell. I thought, and people unable to get out of it. And then more hopefully, as he makes his way with Virgil up, he finally climbs up Satan's hairy legs and gets up to, and listen, purgatory, it spirals. I mean, there's still the 7 deadly obsessions, greed, lust, and envy, and the 7 deadly sins, the mortal sins we learned in grade school. Well, these, at least the souls there had hope, because while they went in circles, they spiraled. There was a journey, and their journey was continuing. So these 2 images, Easter Sunday, walking among my kupuna who had passed. The idea of ghosts as simply people who never got their answers. And then thinking about my own family and my own feelings sometimes, stuck. It made me wonder. It made me wonder about what was it that troubled our family, the Millers. Because there definitely was something frozen for me, some unanswered question, and it revolved around the 2 patriarchs, my 2 grandfathers. One was Japanese, the other was, he was a Texan. And both men carried, how shall we say, some wounds, some trauma. And it came out in my family life because, we started really happy. I started writing. Once upon a time, or under a time, long ago, before time was gathered up into glass, before time was strapped up to a tower and a clock, before time was strapped to a wrist, before time was digital, when there was a masculine and feminine time. In that time, when time was not money, when time was free, and I was born in this place called, in the neighborhood of Palama, the street named Rebello Lane, in a camp, a post-war Japanese camp, where we lived. What I thought as a kid was an incredible secret garden. I mean, I would get up every day, and it was literally senses everywhere. Mock orange blossoms, mangoes, avocados. When it rained on our tin roof, you could just sleep forever. It felt so like you were wrapped in that pitter patter made you feel like you were wrapped in a thick blanket of sound. And by mid-morning, 2 houses down was Shirabe Simon's stand. We lived above the crack sheet store. So Mr. Sumiyoshi was a landowner. And 2 doors down, Shirabe Simon's stand, the sisters would begin. I just picture them as like these wizards, these henwives stirring the Simon broth. They started it hours before lunchtime. And the smoke, like a Disney movie, like a Disney, and the smoke would curl up, animated smoke would come and drift across our camp into the noses of everybody, waking us up. And pretty soon we were going like zombies. Mom, can I have a quarter? And we'd be off to the Simon stand. I think 25 cents. Small Simon. 30 cents for 1 ton and 10 cents for barbecue sticks, which the sisters grilled on an open coal fire, hibachi, probably kiawe, and the smoke. Oh my God, the smoke. So this was such a sensuous world. Mango season. We ate mango in every single form. We caught it, we cut the mango, we pickled the mango. We chopped it, we ate it with vinegar. And the juice would be everywhere, right? We had our adorable shirts because we would just keep wearing them till they disintegrated. But the mango juice would, get all over our faces, and we were like hungry dwarfs. We just eat the mango, and it was like on our shirt, and the orange goo all over us. And then we take the water hose and wash our faces. It's like, oh my God, we make missionaries blush, I'm sure. So it was this happy childhood, and every morning I'd get up and there'd be kids. My mom had 7, right? So we were out playing, running around, going crazy under the banyan tree, the big banyan tree, which we knew nothing about, but that had actually come from Ainahau. So it's Kailani School, named after princess. We knew nothing. We were travelers in post-war. Go for broke, Hawaii. Everybody wanted to be 300% American. I lived in a Japanese camp, for God's sake. My uncle had lost his toes in Italy. They all wanted to prove they're 100, 300, 500% American. Dan Inouye lost his arms, right? It was that thing of denying. Well, celebrate secretly, but on the surface, pretend and make sure you know that you're American. I would live later than when my dad first brought my mom home. Cray Elijah, who was howly as they can be, Texan, actually said out of his mouth, I heard this from my sister, "Get that Jap out of my house." That was my mom's greeting. So every morning I woke up and my friends had names like Boku, Shige, Kazu, Nori, Kenji, Tadashi. Of course, there was Peter Boy, the Hawaiian family, William, and Lono, but mostly Japanese. And it was fun. I didn't need social networking. It was there. The camp was a world. It grieves me to see kids only staring at screens in this little box. They're in kind of Tibetan Bardo, or they're in Dante's Hell. Aren't they in circles sometimes, I think? And the loneliness. And anyway, woo! So there we were in this beautiful garden, daily in the yard if we could. And there was a fence. That was our Narnia. We jumped over the fence. Boom! We were in Narnia. We don't need no closet. We were running around in the field. And the banyan tree with its roots was like a giant, I don't know what you want to call it, a giant, we didn't have, you know, we didn't have Legos. That was our Lego, the tree. We didn't need Fortnite, we had it right there. We'd act out our fantasies on the tree. After the movies from Palama Theater, we'd come out there and play. And we'd follow the seasons. We were really wild. The tops and the yo-yos and the marbles. Oh my God, the marbles, you know, the crystal clearies, the emerald, the ruby, the cat's eye, the bambuchas. You know, like hungry dwarves were gathering gold, and we'd play. There were games of chance, or games where there were stakes. You could take home other people's marbles, other people's cards, other people's milk covers. Yeah, like dwarves, hoarding and bringing them home. Ah, my mom would smile. See, her father, Hiro Saburo, was a gambler. Believe it or not. Believe it or not. Full time. And Hiro had come from Japan at the turn of the century. My mom found out only late, when they went to look for her birth certificate, that she actually was born in Japan. She thought she was born here. He'd come over. But what was strange was everybody else came from farming. Hiro Saburo came from a soldiering family, I guess in the Meiji. And he gambled. I mean, if you weren't fighting, I guess you gambled. Those are the choices. Pretty binary. And so, he dreamt he was ascending Mount Fuji and he made all this money and he descended Mount. Somehow he ended up, I never got the true story. It's woven, it's hidden in the story myth, wrapped in the myths, right? Maybe he lost money. Maybe he owed money. Maybe they were after him. Hiro Saburo arrived here. On the other side, my dad's side, his father had come too at the same time into the embrace of old age. My dad's story was, your grandfather was running away. He rode on a horse. He stole a horse. He used to ride with Billy the Kid, you know. Billy the Kid. I mean, I said, really? Really, Dad? I love the story. I loved it. Even though it covered maybe some of the truth, I loved it because on TV I saw, rolling, 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 keep them doggies rolling, rawhide, wind and rain and weather, hasten together, keeping my buddy by my side. And then I heard, Paladin, Paladin, where do you roll? These stories. Oh, they have a cowboy. They have an outlaw. My family was thrilling. Well, so what was the word? It's there, isn't it, in all the stories? You've got to find, in the beginning was the word. What is the word? What is your true name? What is your true face? I remember, I was scared, but I love the story of Rumpelstiltskin, the little man, spinning the straw, coming to take the baby. There's a curse, and there's a wager, and there's a name. Well, I didn't have the Rumpelstiltskin name to make my ghost walk away. And so, one day, so I pursued this whenever we had family gatherings, and they weren't often, but when we did, I pressed my sisters, because I was the youngest of 7. By the time I came, Mom, she had long lost her groove, you know. I look back at a picture of her in her 20s, and she is sassy in those outfits that they wore back then in the 30s. I mean, you know, her hair up, short, coiffed. She could have stepped out of the Joy Luck Club. Then her face more Chinese actually, but there she was, and she worked as a waitress in. My dad was beginning at the Advertiser. He spent all his life there at the Advertiser as a linotypist, printing copy, getting copy ready by the other writer. But he had to type really fast and he had to type accurately because you're typing in hot lead. There's no erase button, none of the stuff that we got, no windows to the world, no word. You have to type and accurately. So he had to read carefully the details. For 40 years, I just can't imagine sitting there in that darkness, my dad. Only once, I think, I went to his workplace. And I said, shit, I could never handle this. But it bothered me because I could tell by the arguments, right? You know the arguments, those repetitive ones. There was something, some kind of wound somewhere, somebody, some kind of curse somewhere. And it bothered me. And in all those stories, right? In all the stories, somebody did something, somebody forgot something, somebody didn't invite somebody. And the one that I am presently on is it's the fox wife dreaming. You know, it's a story that's traveled around the world. I'm sure hundreds of versions, but something like this. There's a man, Tito Salvador, maybe, or Craig, or my father, or maybe me. A hunter who's lonely, lives alone, comes back one night, walking up to his hut, and he sees fire. Somebody's at the hearth, and light coming out into the darkness. And as he calls up to the door and he opens it, to his amazement, first he can smell the stew, the wild game, and vegetables and roots cooking, and he can sense that the place is different. It looks great. Somebody's cleaned up. And at the hearth, with her back turned towards him, is the most beautiful creature he's seen. Hair tumbling in rivulets off her shoulder, and streaks of red. And she's there, and he can sense she's standing with that grace that knows that somebody's looking. You know that feeling? The girls know it and the guys know it when you're looking. She turns and she has green eye. Green eye. And he is blown away. And she says, wow. She says, come and eat. Wow. And for once, in that moment, that golden moment, he rests in the completeness, right? The iris of perfect contentment, perfect domestic contentment, the peace. And all the loneliness leaves. And of course she says, I can stay as your wife. You know the story. I can stay as your wife. I can marry you. But there's a promise. It's always a promise. Garden of Eden is always a promise. Something you've got to make a commitment. Because, you see, she hangs her pelt of foxskin right at the front door on a nail. She says, you must never touch or remove the foxskin, and I will be your wife. And so he lives. I mean, I don't know how long, 5-10 years. My dad had 7 kids. He lived in happiness, bliss. I mean, they must have had conjugal bliss, some of them. But whenever it happens, right? You know the story. The guy does something. Either he looks in the basket, or in this case, he said, honey, this is really, really great, but and I tell you, man, I don't want to make light of this, but I don't mean to hurt your feelings. And, you know that thing we say as men. But it's just this one thing, man. It's that pelt. Could you just take it outside? Could you just, please, move it? And say, oh, no, that's okay. And he doubles. But, it plays, and the scent, and it gets into everything, right? The musk gets into everything, and finally one day, he takes the pelt. You know what he's going to do. And he takes it and throws it out. Sometimes it's a sealskin. Sometimes it's the basket. He throws it and he breaks his promise. He touches it. And full stop. Without a voice, she walks out into the night, into the stars. And the man ends there, kind of spaced out, literally, looking up, wondering what he lost, wondering, waiting. Well, sad story. My mom and dad, by the time I came along, they were in their 40s. I was the last, right? And the light had gone out. On both sides. This isn't just a sexist, a misogynistic tale. This is on both sides. She, I think, had something in him that she couldn't stand. And it was this strange thing, and I needed the Rumpelstiltskin word. I needed to find out why so much of the life of the family had been stolen. What happened to the joy? They never slept in the same bed. Well, it took a while, a lot of digging after Easter, phone calls, and I kind of slowly figured out, tried to find a secret word, that would make it all come together. And I found two things that I want to share, and one of them is that, like bad breath, trauma is always what other people have. We don't quite see clearly our own. And I realized that, in their withdrawal from each other, and as the youngest, I felt guilty. I felt really guilty whenever they'd argue. It was always about money, ostensibly, but we all know when you're talking about money, you're talking about arguing about toothpaste or the toilet paper, you're really not, right? So what I found out was this, that my dad, father, Craig, crazy, who had his own demons, when Dad was 15, shot a police officer. My grandmother hit his hand in time because he was brewing moonshine, and they came investigating. I don't know if they had cell phones back then, but somebody's Craig was brewing, so they came up and hit his arm. Luckily the bullet hit the police officer, but only in his ear. It didn't die. But my grandfather went to jail. Dad had to leave St. Louis. That had to be traumatic at 15, at the oldest boy, go to work. He worked various jobs, finally landed at the Advertiser, where he began his 50-year career. Thank God for the Advertiser. But, and it was there, and he carried that kind of, I guess, shame forward, and Craig himself too was really terrible. Though he built the house in Penui, and I have to give him that, by his own hand, and he was hard scrabble. But Craig was not really good with money, and often took out his temper on my grandmother. She died early at 52. Dad was 29. His brother died 2 years before, at age 21. His brother died at age 21, 1934, and Dad kind of carried that grief. And I think Craig was probably a rageaholic, I would guess. I'm not sure. He softened in his later years, which means there's hope for all of us. And my mom, her father took ill about the same time that Ellen, my grandmother, died. And my dad was a breadwinner, younger brothers and sisters, 6 of them, in Punui, paying the mortgage, paying the bank, paying the taxes, supporting my mom, whom Craig called, Craig said, get the Jap out of here. They were living together in this tension. So when the opportunity came, because my mother's father, living in Palama, was ill, the Japanese camp, Dad moved with her to be closer. But the moment he got there, Hiro Saburo passed away. And so my mom's mother, who they came there to support, went back to Japan. And for whatever reason, Dad stayed. So we were the only Haole family in a Japanese camp. And I was grateful for that. And there they raised us 7 children. But I found in that story that he too was an orphan. My mom was kind of an orphan because, Hiro Saburo, never even talked to her in those days. He talked to father, to daughter. My dad would say, I come, and it would be like sake and sashimi. And Hiro Saburo would be there silent. And he would talk, according to my mom, he would talk to his wife to talk. So she grew up in that kind of frozen landscape. Wherever that was. There's a Mahayana story of 500 worms in a fetid environment, crawling around in slop, in a hole. And they live there until a bodhisattva of mercy turns himself into a golden bumblebee. The golden bumblebee flies across the pit of the worms and sings Om, the sacred 6 syllables. Om Mane Padme Om Mane Padme Om Mane Padme Om. And those worms, saying and hearing those syllables, penetrated to the very heart of their existence, and they sprouted wings, and they flew. And I think when I touched the fact that both my mom and dad needed from each other what the other couldn't give, something in me softened a little bit. It wasn't total liberation. I'm still wanting to go through more of that story. And almost like as a kind of blessing, I staggered upon the fact that this, besides not knowing Kailani, who Kailani was, that Palama, which I thought was a ghetto place to run away from, was originally a place of refuge. Ka Palama means, my daughter who teaches Kamakam said it means the sacred enclosure. That Palama was a kind of wood, lama wood was a kind of ebony, and you see it on the big island. That would be a place to provide a sacred marking where Ali'i lived or had children. It was to mark a sacred place. And then I found out that Lilio Kalani, in the last 7 years, when she was going through this same search for a word, and we know that she had a hard 7 years. And already not at home. I mean, John Dominus's mother didn't call her Jap, but she did, according to witnesses, feel like he had married a darky, And there was some marital discord, and she adopted his son by another woman, and 2 others, Hanai. And then Lilio's domestic life suffered, right? Personally. And then in the midst of that, she bought land and built a house in the middle of the edge of Honolulu in a little place called Palama. And she named that house Mu'olaulani, a place where a new life could be lived, new blossoms could grow, where caterpillars could sprout wings. And the song she wrote, the Casimira is recorded, and I'm going to sing it for you in my worst possible voice, because I just love the song. E mea nui ke aloha ke hiki mai i nei me o ku'ule kai manala kahiko o ku'ukino ku'ule popohei kala'i no hea'i mu'olaulani kape utila Mauia